Hey, real quick, unless you grew up with Primavera or own Oracle stock, or maybe both, you probably wish your schedule was easy to understand and interact with. This is where Planera comes in. Planera is a modern CPM planning and scheduling platform built for construction teams. Real-time collaborative, visual, making it easy to plan work while staying powerful enough to manage complex schedules. There are better ways to plan, and Planera is one of them. Check it out. Fuad, I'm excited to get into this. You and I met because I actually listened to a podcast of yours. You were on, I think, the Construction Brothers, and I was a hit at the time, and I was trying to get into really understanding just like program level development of IC and prefab and modular, and I think I reached out to you out of the blue, and you took my call, which I appreciate. And then also like continued to kind of blow my mind around like, hey, you need to think more broadly around not just at a project level, but hey, what's going to be the program that's going to support kind of the culture that you're trying to shift into? And so I think you broadened my horizons in that way, and so I'm glad to have you on here. I think I wanted to start with just like maybe the state of the union of IC in general. From the outside looking in, we've spent a lot of time on these different silver bullets, whether it was BIM, and then it was maybe like construction tech in general. Prefab and modular was certainly one of those silver bullets at one time. Where are we at? Are we getting the adoption we thought we would? What's the state of it?
Um, I was looking at this the other day. Modular Building Institute, they have some numbers on adoption, and we've seen some significant adoption of modular offsite prefab pretty broadly. But I think Modular Building Institute's very happy. A lot of people put in a lot of work. I don't have the figures offhand, but I think it's a multiple or two, but it's short of where like McKinsey thought we would be, say, almost 10 years ago now. So we're showing good growth, but we're not where anybody wanted. I think there's been some barriers to adoption. Obviously, the broader interest rate environment has not helped. So as capital's kind of dried up, people have less appetite to do pilot projects, R&D initiatives, strategic outlooks on modular. Um, so that's been a real constraint. But then I also think, you know, I think the first wave was just getting these facilities up and running. So I remember, 7 or 8 years ago, people used to come to the plant I was working at, and there weren't very many places that were trying to do this. It was pretty fringe. Now you can go all over the country, and there's usually like something going on in every region. Like you can go Upper Midwest, and there's some really good plants doing this stuff. Anybody involved in data centers, the MEP level, is doing this stuff now. So there's companies like Blocks and Built that you can get prefab volumetric modules. There's stuff going on in Canada right now that's really active. So I think like the novelty's kind of worn off. But for me, I think the next step is the execution. We still don't really do the execution that well. Everybody was still trying to figure out like IP and how do we set up our lines? What kind of products are we making? But in terms of like integrating all of that effectively on site and capturing all of the value, I think that's the next hurdle. At least that's kind of where I'm focused. You can make the part really well and still blow the job when you get on site. You know
That's
what
a
I mean?
that's a yeah, that's an interesting point. I think we sometimes go over that. When from a GC kind of standpoint, what is the state, or what does that spectrum of GC look like? If we're looking at maybe the more mature GCs who have maybe some IC related titles internally. Are they still, and obviously this is kind of an impossible question because I'm asking you to speak to a whole industry full of different logos. But I think the question is, are we seeing an internalization of the principles of IC for these different GCs, or is it mainly still happening at the project level?
I think it really depends. Like on some of the hyperscales, it's hard to call that just only project level. Those efforts are so massive. Um, you really are setting up like industrial scale applications. So if you look at something like Stargate in Texas, I have a friend of mine that's working on that, and he says we finally achieved China level speed, which is what his whole thing has been, right? So that's happening. That's in some ways that's just a giant microchip on the surface of the earth, right? So a lot of the constraints that we find in smaller projects just aren't there. I mean, everybody's behind this thing, multiple companies, a lot of risk, a lot of money, but we've now demonstrated that we can execute that broadly, and this is happening not just at that project. A lot of the hyperscale sites are achieving that. I think what we really want though is broad-based adoption. So medical's done really well. Medical is on board, and actually we had a little bit of a lull, but medical's coming back. I think we're seeing like maybe the second generation of thinking around IC and medical. It's maturing really well. But hospitality also has been maturing quite well. Some of the bigger operators like Marriott have adopted IC in a lot of their products and have the track record to show for it. Um, Mass timber is an industrialized construction product inherently, and there is a lot of interesting adoption happening in mass timber right now. It's still early. There's a lot of different models. Some people are doing kind of a vertically integrated. Some people are, designing kind of bespoke products for on a program basis. I was recently at a conference in Boston, and some of the things that are going on in Boston in terms of large scale housing are really interesting, and they really are putting it together. But more work needs to be done. I really do think it's going to change the way we execute projects, and it's going to change the way we contract work. I don't think the contract form, even an integrated I don't think we're done evolving yet on how we deliver this in terms of like what the relationships are, how the business model works, and kind of how the buyers ought to be educated about it. But it's coming along. I think when we see maybe when some of the financial constraints, when we start seeing the money kind of ease up, I think we're going to see another wave of development in IC. And look, the, uh, the labor picture is not it is accelerating the IC adoption. I was looking at a statistic this morning, and I think is it the Association of General Contractors? I think the number was about 316,000 fewer workers in construction than before some of these enforcement
Not a
actions
small
have been
number.
taken. That is
Not a
a
small
big
number.
number for our industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the trade level. So we're going to need to come up with these solutions. There's really nowhere else to go.
So, just killer perspective there. Can you? So you talked about Stargate. So I think one could, if listeners aren't familiar, one could you introduce what that project is doing? But two, I think about the scale of that one versus the scale of 200 unit multifamily or 300 unit multifamily project, and think about the logistical challenges associated with you know both of those very divergent sort of projects, right? And well, it's prefab, it's manufactured. It's like, yeah, but the scale and the optimization of what that prefab environment looks like, very very different. And then I'll sort of put a bow on this with when I think building cars, right? How many Denali's does Chevy or GMC push out every year, right? They're kind of the same with some minor trim level differences, right? So what does building in this prefab space look like to achieve that level of scale? And really, what does standardization look like in these manufacturing plants? Because I think that's what made the car industry so successful, to basically be able to pump things out in such a controlled way. But I go outside and everything looks different. There's nuance to everything. Every site's different. Every soil condition's different. Like, what are these components of standardization? And then going back to small scale versus large scale, how do they make it work?
Yeah, well, that's very interesting. A lot to unpack there.
Lars likes to ask like the 4 point questions that,
Yeah,
and I actually do too. We actually ask a lot of impossible questions. We need to
no,
work
no,
on
it's
that, Lars, I
good.
think.
That's good. No, I think I can keep it straight. Look, on the data center energy, you have a lot of standardization. So I often use a tool, and if you're interested, I can share the graphic with you, and later you can edit it in. But imagine kind of a matrix. Uh, you have flexibility on one axis and standardization on the other axis, and kind of where we the optimal modular solution lays out on a diagonal on a diagonal line. So depending how much flexibility you want to see in the product, there's a level of standardization that's appropriate to the amount of flexibility you're looking for. So, for example, a electrical substation is highly standardized. So, if you were to completely, uh, do a modular kit of parts on a substation, uh, you know, that works because you really want those things to be as identical as you possibly can. If you look at NVIDIA's DGX SuperPod architecture and how those aisles need to be cooled, and what the redundancy spec on an NVIDIA unit needs to be uh, to uh, to conform to the manufacturer's recommendations. That's pretty specific. You're going to do it exactly the same way. You're going to do it for every rack and every module inside that entire facility. And then it's just a function of how efficiently can you get the thing to cool, how efficiently can you get the signal out, right? And that's all there is to it. You're just duplicating that. Cooling tower cooling systems are also modular. You can get those where they're deployable. Microgrids are modular. There's things like linear generators for backup power that run on natural gas. There's entire natural gas plants you can buy that are modular for backup. So it's a little machine. When you start talking about um, kitchenette kitchenettes in the Minneapolis market, and what the consumer is, that what their expectations are on what real estate thinks we need to have in order to sell this unit, and how many floor plans should we offer. That's very specific, and you need a little bit more diversity, because that's a function of taste, market, fashion, um, novelty. All these things are actually really important when we talk about human beings. So there's the level of flexibility in a prefab kitchen pod needs to be higher to some extent, but not as high as a custom home. So I think these things are very. I think there's a solution in every context, but they are context dependent, market dependent, application dependent uses, and they need to be that needs to be taken seriously. You have to listen to what the market wants and meet it where it is. In my opinion, you have to listen to your customer. So that's really the rub of it is what is the appropriate and efficient way to meet the market expectation on a given product or market geography.
So you started Modly as a way, as a vehicle to kind of provide maybe that insight into the AC industry, working with, I believe, owners, GCs, trades, a variety of different kind of perspectives. Who is, like, let's name names. Let's, we don't have to. Who is dropping the ball the most of the three? Owners, GCs, trades. Like, who's not coming to the table in playing the role in creating the ecosystem? Because I like, even when you mentioned the spectrum of standardization to flexibility, there's a lot of different consumers and a lot of different stakeholders in that's going to impact whatever solution you craft, right? And it requires alignment between those stakeholders. And so who do you most often see not understanding maybe the value of engaging in the crafting of that solution?
That has a really negative.
Should I
It's
ask a
not a.
positive question?
It's
Put a
not a
proposed spin
criticism.
on
No,
it, yeah, proposed.
I just think it's a function of education.
Yeah.
And anytime you bring a new solution to the market, um, the it's the amount of resources you need to do the first one. That's really the trick. I would just say that in general, because it's such an intensive investment, I don't think it favors inexperienced customers. This is really something that, I mean, at the end of the day, this is not a like to have. This is a solution to a specific problem. So if you're a vice president of construction in a company and you've got to get hotels up or hospitals up, and you're looking at your escalation and you're looking at your change orders and you're looking at projects that didn't go very well, and this is becoming like a systemic issue, you're being queried by your management, you're going to look for a solution to get this thing under control. Ultimately, I do think it's about reliability, and the people that need reliability, they know the value to spend. So we're always going to be talking about a premium if we're going to launch a pilot project, do a proof of concept, have an R&D expenditure on investigating whether we should build a plant or invest in one or partner with one, right? I mean, that's above and beyond your standard order of business. If you think you're going to try to do this because you want to get a jump on a market on an investment cycle, um, chances are by the time you get everything lined up, you're going to be too late. And that's not the mindset. It's not about making your next looking like a hero next quarter or the quarter after that. This has really got to be a long-term play. But there's plenty of customers out there that understand that and are looking for that kind of solution. So I just don't think you need to force it. I do think when in my experience, projects where I've had to work with really inexperienced folks who'd like to do this but haven't been around construction very much, that's really where we run into some issues. And it's just a function of uh, inexperience, really. And this is not something, these are deep waters, and you need to know what you're doing to get in. Now, ultimately, and I think this is why there's confusion, is because people realize that it's going to be at scale, and everybody sees the future where it's a lot easier to buy these products. You can sort of get them off the shelf, but we need to understand that most of these products are not built to order. I don't think we will ever have a situation where you literally buy these things off the shelf the way people tell you. At the end of the day, it's not a cart, because if I'm going to set up with you to do a program, and we're going to do a multi-year, we're going to have a multi-year relationship, and we're going to look at our critical pipeline of products, and have you onboarded on a program basis. Well, I better make sure that you're building it to my spec. Okay. Uh, yeah. So it's never going to be like, hey, we'll buy X number of these the way you make them and just give them to me when they're ready. No, I want to know that specific facilities have specific requirements and demands. Organizations have standards for a reason. They've run into trouble in the past, and they want to make sure that you use this supplier, not that supplier. You configure the product this way, not that way, because our maintenance people know that that's a problem. And that's going to require like an investment. And that means you've got to build these things to order, not to stock.
See, I think that's one of is or going to be one of the biggest challenges from an adoption standpoint when everything is there's components of massive uniqueness. Sure, it's a box. Sure, there's something coming offline, but well, it's really built to order. And I just don't know how across the country you have manufacturing plants that are 100% custom, built to order every single time, and can control quality and pricing the way I think the automotive industry does, or some of these other big manufacturing sort of industries that are pumping out, 10 bazillion of the same widgets, if that makes sense. And I think there's components of like, catalog purchasing, like a frame, a structure, but then beyond that, then there's the uniqueness of what color do you want your cabinets, and maybe there's a local supplier that can handle that. But we're pumping out the shell, we're pumping out the structure.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. So let's just look at a bathroom. So in a bathroom, we have a vanity and a mirror, and we have fixtures, accessories, and that's a pretty diverse market. You can get whatever you want. You can get the millwork and the vanity and the sink. It could be Kohler, it could be Delta, it could be something European. Uh, just think about the variety we have, and just in terms of toilet accessories. It's massive. Tile, finish, paint color, right? But then now let's look at the plumbing assembly, the riser, the trap. Okay, that's where you're really spending the money. That's the intensive labor. So that manufacturer has got that on lock. Like, they know exactly how to do that. They can source with you. They can work with you on your millwork or whatever. So that's kind of what we're talking about. Is we're going to standardize the cost centers, but ultimately, I think we want to deliver a higher value and quality and better products to the broader market. That's what I
100%,
think. Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Hey, really quick, there's a lot of noise right now around AI in construction. And if you've listened to the show, I am generally pretty skeptical around any AI that is not focused on leveling up you, the individual. What I appreciate about Trunk Tools is how they're intentionally building human centric tools. Their focus is on AI that supports the craft and takes the busy work out of your day and helps experienced builders spend more time building. One fact that kind of blew my mind. Did you know that workers on average spend 5.5 hours per week just looking for project data or information out of a typical work week? That's bonkers. I think we can all agree. And if you'd like to learn more about the tool and how Trunk Tools can help you reduce that time, look for the link in the description to visit their website and book a demo.
Is there a tension, or maybe it's like a cart or a horse situation, where if, and my history is on the GC side, so that's where I can orient my perspective. But if say a regional contractor who's looking to position themselves well for what they think is not just a trend, obviously, but a way to respond to the market dynamics around labor, do you start to invest in the cultural components that will allow you to respond to these kinds of projects that have these requirements, or Do you wait and get like do you try and win a project and then learn that capability? I don't know. It just seems like, to your point earlier, experience is required. How do you gain the experience?
That's an interesting question. I remember working with a supplier here back when I was just doing architecture. We were working on Children's Hospital of Alabama, which was really big, one of these big medical center projects. And the MEP contractor had just invested in like a spooling software that was computer assisted spooling for their pipe assemblies. And they standardized a lot of these. And they set up a little shop about maybe a few blocks away from the construction site where they were doing this in a systematic basis, you know? And I think it's stuff like that. It's like everybody knows how they can get their shop more efficient. And if you, and it's just kind of a logical progression. It's like, okay, we can start standardizing the spooling. We can start standardizing the spooling process. So our guys understand how much, what are the assemblies, what's needed. We have a standardized setup inside the shop. We have a protocol for testing. Okay, now we're going to rack that, right? We're gonna add a rack assembly to that so they can install it much faster. Okay, now we're going to go multi-trade. We're going to partner with we're plumbing, or we're going to partner with the mechanical shop, and we might combine these things together. Well, what do we need to do that? So part of it, I think, is ground up like that. It's just people investing in the efficiencies. And then I think another part of it has to do with trying to get your head around manufacturing theory. And there's a lot in manufacturing theory and thinking that's now it's like almost getting to be pretty commonplace in construction. Full planning, for example, is a different way to think about how you organize. Uh, there's also work package planning, or that type of planning effort. These are things that are now like they're coming over from manufacturing, but Lean Construction Institute, has been pushing this now for some time. So that to me is the top down. That's the Frederick Taylor getting the better shovel, right, and analyzing how much the shape, the geometry of the shovel head impacts the output. But then you've also got bottom up. It's like, okay, how do we get more organized so my guys can be more efficient? We can make more money. So at the very granular, like basic level, that's part of it. Without getting into
Yeah.
program logistics, all that other stuff, right?
Or market conditions that ultimately will drive energy into it or not, right?
Yeah.
Are interest rates even appropriate to do this?
Right. Well, and the other thing that's really interesting to think about on that order is like, okay, we're seeing a lot more consolidation, right, in the market. We've got these big national companies, and they buy local operators of whatever hotels, restaurants, and so okay, let's just project that out. Let's not even make a value judgment as to whether that's good or bad. Let's just understand that like capital consolidation is happening inside a market. There are bigger players, and now they're operating coast to coast. Okay, put yourself in somebody. What does that organization need? They need to be able to expand, upgrade, add facilities, and they need to be able to do that reliably. And they want to know that if you walk into a Red Robin in Maryland and you walk into a Red Robin in Arizona, it's the same one, right? So, I mean, like at a basic level, that's happening in the economy, and that's going to drive a lot of these deals. I mean, look, one company I like to really point to is Chick-fil-A. I mean, Chick-fil-A's done amazing stuff by taking this route.
My
And,
kids
and
really appreciate their work product.
yeah,
Yeah,
and,
we're a
and th-
big
they've
Chick fil A family.
they've incorporated flow into how the restaurants work, how the drive-through works. And when you walk into some of the newer stores, you can understand the engineering, and the stores feel better. And I bet you
Yeah.
they can report better construction outcomes. I've seen them take down a lot of the old stores, put new ones in, and triple the throughput on a given store. And the architecture and construction is a big part of that, how you execute that. So that's going to happen. That's going to drive a lot of it too.
I love a lot of what you're saying. There's the Frederick Windsor Taylor reference, the grandfather of manufacturing theory. That's a great little shout out. And then I also like this concept of it's not as binary like are we going to be an IC shop or not. It's almost this journey along at your maturity as it relates to whether it's lean theory or just becoming a more efficient operation. And at some point, IC and kind of modular thinking is a kind of a milestone along that journey. I like that as a framework. Let me ask you this question. Say I gave you $1 billion, Fuad, and I was like, let's let you and I build an entity in construction that we think solves some of the challenges and embraces maybe the theory that we're discussing. What does that entity look like? Is it a GC? Would you start on the trade side? Would you be an owner? You got $1 billion.
Uh,
At $1 billion, that's the most
I
important
would
thing.
I would invest it entirely into educating the workforce.
Wow. That's
I
a
would I would
really interesting answer.
Yeah, we do not like, you look at the Chinese uh, manufacturing capability. There's a wonderful, I think his name is Wang. He's a writer. He did a video op-ed for the Wall Street Journal a few months ago. I think I tagged it on LinkedIn, and he's being very provocative. He says that the American manufacturing plant is decaying from stem to stern. We use this, I mean, it's top to bottom. And you go to China, and it's the opposite. And and then he talks about something called process knowledge, and I think that's really what we're missing here. If we have process knowledge, which is not theory, uh, it's not design. It's actually about knowing the it's the practice of building things all the time. It's your process knowledge. It's your group. Like when you go and you talk to people who are in manufacturing, you know, you talk to somebody who makes a carpet, and they can tell you, the exact mixture of the glue and the resins and how they're applied and how what forces they have to resist. I mean, it's so granular because all that stuff actually ends up mattering, and you have to have that mindset. So I'd like to have a lot more process engineers, manufacturing engineers, but manufacturing engineers with a really good knowledge of construction. I'd like to have joint ventures between schools of engineering and schools of building science and schools of architecture, basically new curriculum, because we need a lot more people that can drive the change. I think we want to do the change, but we're missing that process knowledge.
Education. That's
Yeah,
the $1 billion is educate.
we've
Yeah.
got to completely restructure the workforce around this. Once we do that, I think the business models will follow. I think all the innovation will come, but we have to really rethink the entire industry from ground up, and it's a lot more of a fusion of construction and manufacturing than it's ever been.
So if what resources would you recommend for people who want to try to plug in to this? Is there newsletters? Is there a YouTube channel? Where's the content coming from that can help educate them really? Because no one's pumping $1 billion in for education.
Yes, sir.
Any recommendations?
Uh, well, I think everybody can join their Lean Construction Institute chapter if they're interested about that. Um, I have some very good friends in Minneapolis that are really involved with that. I think it's really good. Um, uh, I kind of got into it um, through the Toyota literature. It's all out there. I mean,
100%.
it's
I,
dense.
I, no kidding. I was just thinking with your journey and, one, your passion, two, your knowledge and experience, like, where are you going? Is there anyone putting out content around this for construction, for builders, for what we're trying to do? Or is it
No,
you? No. Okay, there you go.
actually, guys, it's funny. This has been on my mind, but I really want to start a podcast. It's like
Yes.
everybody wants to start a podcast, but
Right.
I think this is missing, and
I
I
100%
think that
agree. I'd
yeah.
listen to your podcast, Fuad.
Oh, thank you.
I'm your
Yeah, well,
first listener.
okay, we'll have you on.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I think like you're pointing at something though I think is really interesting because I think we all kind of skip the education piece and it's like embedded in our culture, right? We kind of joke around how we drop people on projects and then just it's sink or swim, right? That's often referenced
get her
as the
done.
work culture, the onboarding, yeah, get her done, and I think it is a good way to create a merit based kind of project system that rewards good behavior in some ways. But I think when we zoom out and look at some of the challenges the industry is facing, I think how we got here isn't how we're going to get there, and I think you're pointing that out well.
I think there just
Let
needs
Substacks.
to
You
be.
also need a
me just
Substack, Fuad.
yeah, actually that's a good idea,
He
Stephen.
does.
I think that's been on my mind a lot
You
too. I
got a
think
lot.
that's
You
the
got a lot. You got a lot to
I'll
say, and it's organized. It's it
yeah,
yeah,
it,
thank
it,
you.
it tells a message.
I'll
Yeah.
be your hype man. I'll
Okay.
just
All
repost
right,
all your
done.
content.
Yeah, well that I'm stay tuned. Let's put it together.
Let's
Yeah.
I
go. Hey,
like it.
2026 is
Uh
right around the corner.
yeah. One thing wanted to add to that point. A lot of owners are because we're selling efficiency and we're trying to make like a part. We're saying, okay, instead of like 15 things, it's this nice little package thing, and you stick it in your site, your building, and it's done. And that's true, but I think what we haven't been effective in communicating, and I put myself, I've personally suffered from this, is that look, if we're going to take a high value product and there's all this embedded value, right, that we've put into it in the plan. Um, and your expectation is it gets to your site and any old person can just plug and play it. I made it idiot proof. That is the wrong expectation. Okay, it is not the same level of skill to handle my high value part as and I'm sorry to say this, but we kind of had a disposable workforce mentality for the last 30 years. Abundant cheap labor, you can fire them and then just rehire them. You don't have to train them. They can pick it all up on the job. Those days are over. If we're going to have fewer people, those people need to be skilled up. My son, I'm very proud to say, is entering the trades, and he's on the floor. He's an electrical. He's got great grades, good high school, but he wanted to go into trades first. He may still go to college, but he's programming the instrumentation and testing, and he's spending a lot of time doing backnet programming, understanding how those systems work. That's the future. So that's not the same guy that you had before, and your site operations are not going to be the same as you had before. You can't just throw people in the water and not expect this stuff to break. You're dealing with complex operations and complex assemblies, so that's going to change, and that's the part that I don't think we have a handle on yet. uh, to really capture the value, we've got to reskill around all of this, so that it works, so that you're not taking on
I think we're
cost.
coming upon a time when we're going to celebrate our kids joining the trades like we used to celebrate them going to college. Like it is like
It's already
I had this
here.
argument I had this argument with my sister the other day. Like she appreciates the classical education. I also kind of appreciate that approach, and she likes the Ivy Leagues and for her kids. And I'm like, I don't see it. I don't see the value. And I'm I've got three boys, and I hope they get into construction. Like I think there's and I hope they start field first. Lars, I cut you off. What were you gonna say?
I don't know. My mind's moving in about 1,000 different directions right now because the problem is so big. It's like how do you restructure, reorient just the whole industry? And as I'm thinking about this, I mean, you've probably seen the headlines with Musk and these data centers in space, and it's just like, wait a minute, like this dude's been thinking 15 steps ahead of everyone else on this like entrepreneurial journey he's on, and it's like, how do we take one of the oldest industries in the world and reorient in massive, massive ways? Because we're inherently, I think, unstructured. And what we're sort of talking about is, I think, standardizing things, normalizing or structuring certain components around what we do as an industry, so we can deeply train and like deeply reorient for like speed and value. And that is just a big, 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 like my mind hurts right now thinking about it. But it's exciting. That's the opportunity.
Yeah, and also I'm not worried because I think we have the greatest workforce in the world. Um,
Dude, amen.
I mean, the people in construction are superheroes. I
Dude,
see it every
they
day, and so I'm not worried. I think they're just under resourced. You know,
100%, 100%, and I'll tell you that their ability to handle problems, and again, problem solve, reorient, lead a team in such a dynamic, three-dimensional, dirty, high-risk environment.
yeah.
I mean, what a gift! Which is why superintendents do what they do. They absolutely love it. They were born for it, right?
Yeah.
And they can put up with it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
yet we're on a path to kind of
there's a
burn out those
hunger
people.
for this. Yeah, totally. Sorry, Steve, I didn't want me to talk over you.
No, no, no. I think we're going in the same direction. I think there is a hunger for this because I think the status quo leads to insert all of the metrics we use to talk about the problems with the industry, right? The mental health stuff, the divorce rates, the addictions. The status quo doesn't work, and so I think, yeah. How do we reconfigure? I think go back to Elon, Lars. You're right. Like he's thinking about things in a very different way. I don't know if you recently saw his comments about the future and how money doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah, I
I
saw it,
feel,
100%.
I feel like I don't. I didn't listen.
When we
I read the headline and then I moved on.
No,
But
I mean, when you think about manufacturing at this scale, right? And it's robots working for the
yeah,
greater good of humanity that we've created, that we don't need to pay. We get to do the things that we enjoy, and whether it's gardening or walking on the beach, like all of a sudden, like everything changes. Everything changes.
yeah.
It's again hard to think about, but we need to think about it because that's what's going to get us there, and that's what
Well,
where we need to go.
I'm a little more skeptical of our AI utopia future.
Mm.
Um,
Now we're talking.
yeah, I don't
My
know.
counterpoint to Lars.
Maybe eventually. But one thing I've observed is you can't automate what you don't understand. Maybe I just don't know.
No, I think it's returning time and purpose and like quality of life to individuals. Like we're designed to work. We're designed to make things better. We're designed to constantly improve. But, me, and I just sort of say, hand jamming into spreadsheets, responding to thousands of emails. Like this is noise in my life, right? This is annoying. So how can AI accelerate the noise into sort of these moments of check-in, human in the loop, to then to then like move beyond that, which then creates capacity elsewhere in my life or my organization. That's what I desire, right? And I believe that's what workers desire. Get rid of the noise. Let me go lead and interact, bring the human experience back, rather than me being a slave to this desktop computer that I'm sitting behind right now.
Right, right, exactly. I think our first threshold condition is going to be an augmentation, not a
The
replacement.
transition, correct,
Yeah,
correct,
and
100%.
that augmentation phase will be a long one, and it'll be a very very transformative and productive one. But it is. I don't think it's about replacement. Um,
100%.
yeah. That's and that's what we're going to need to do because we just don't have enough of the people, and we'd like for things to get better. I do. I mean, I want my kids to
Yeah.
have. I still want my kids to have a better future, no matter what they say on the news. And I do think
100%.
that the construction industry is the key to that. I
Yeah.
mean,
I
we need a
agree.
lot of other things. We need political will, we need unity, we need all that stuff. But like, we need process knowledge in order to pull that
Yeah.
off.
We we have to stay smart, right? We got to stay in the loop. We got to lead it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love your kind of orientation to education and thinking maybe intentionally about how we do that better. A segment of the listening base of this show is younger PMs and superintendents. And so, what's your message to them? And I think you had one, which was, you had a number of them, but one of them was like, join your local association. What else would you say to them?
Well, the first thing I would say is follow your curiosity and nurture your curiosity. Your curiosity will get you there. And if you can't quite get there on a with an employer or in a situation, try to set your sights somewhere where your curiosity is rewarded. That will sort of self-generate what you're looking for.
Satisfaction. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah,
working then.
exactly. You're not working, and that's the other thing is I do think this is a calling, and if it's not a calling, then maybe you should try to do something else. Like if you're
100%.
not called to build things, it's okay. Just find something I mean,
Yeah.
But I think there's plenty of people who are, and I think those are the people that they need to listen to their gut about where they want to go.
What's funny is I believe many are and they resist it. They
Yeah,
resist it.
yeah,
Well, and I
yeah,
think if you're not feeling the great vibes of your current situation, and you're knee deep in paperwork on a tough project, working 5 to 8 every day, it's because we keep all thinking collectively that there's one way to do this. We keep doing it kind of the same way. And I do think there's an opportunity for young people to say, I'm not doing it this way anymore. This weekend, I vibe coded an app that replaces all the things that I don't like doing. And oh, by the way, that's my IP. And you can interact
Love
with
it.
my digital twin. Like
Love it.
there's a different way coming. But Lars, go
Love
ahead.
it.
yeah.
No, I
That's
was just
cool.
thinking. I was just thinking. Just that what you just described is the change that I think is occurring, and that if the employers or the leadership of these organizations that these guys, the new talent is working for, right, and they're stuck doing it the old way, then I think those individuals need to not be fearful. They need to be curious to what you were saying, and be willing to make a change, right? And go reinforce the company that's willing to try new things, right? Experiment and support you in a different way rather than these draconian, well, this is the way we started doing it in 1986 when the
Yeah.
company was founded. And guess what? We figured it out then, so don't touch it. Don't touch it.
Yeah.
It works.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. That's absolutely true, and that's everywhere. But you know what? Retirements are going to take care of that, for better and worse. I mean, I
100%.
You're
I,
right.
I used to, man. I remember just being young and full of piss and vinegar, and like just hearing that. I mean, when I was in school, We used to get hammered for. I was one of the first people that drew with the computer. You have no
But,
idea,
but
you know. And
Fu,
so, yeah, go ahead.
what's wild though is what's the generation that we walked into. What was their generation that they walked into? Think about the amount of transformation that's occurred in the
Hmm.
past 50 years,
Yeah,
right? So for 2,000 years, things really didn't change that much. I think how big of a deal carbon copy paper was. Like, oh my gosh, I don't have to write things three times. I can just have three different copies of like that was probably a big change event. Like,
oh
I
yeah.
don't know what are we going to do with Tim in the corner? I mean, all he does, he just writes copies.
Well, it did. Okay, I'll give you one example. And this was so cool. I worked at a really great firm where, I think it was like a Mad Men in there, which I loved.
Yeah,
And
I like whiskey
yeah, they would take
at noon.
they had assistants who took dictation.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I saw that. Like that's in my career
Yeah,
still. So it
that's pretty
went from
crazy.
dictation to, and I drew with a parallel bar on my first job. I mean, that almost seems quaint by today's standards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like the
Well,
change from drawing by hand to computer, it was like the foothill of this like hockey stick. But once we're in that change dynamic, and change becomes more of the norm, and also the people that were holding the line. I mean, what I wanted to say earlier was I miss some of their guidance now,
mm,
Yeah,
because it sure
yeah.
was reassuring, being the iconoclast, but knowing no matter what you did, there was a safe pair of hands that was gonna make sure shit that's not there anymore.
yeah, that's a
That's
good
the other
point.
side of it.
What's funny though is that if you go ask ChatGPT if it likes your idea, if you think you're heading in the right direction, what's it going to tell you?
That's
Oh
gonna
yeah,
tell you it's great. It's
you're
amazing.
Yeah.
great. You're
You,
doing
you're you're
wonderful.
a
Good
genius.
job.
Well, I think the other advice I think to the next generation is find like guys like you and work next to you guys. Like I think like Lars, you've got a couple companies. Fu, you're doing all kinds of things on the consulting front, but also just I think one of the reasons I reached out to you was because there's an authenticity in your messaging to the market, which isn't necessarily like commercially oriented. Like you're not selling anything. You're really trying to improve what we're doing. And so, yeah, next
Thank you.
generation,
Yeah.
go find guys like Lars and Fuad to work for and with. We're over time, but any final thoughts, Fuad?
No, man, it's I think we've got to do a better job about talking about this stuff more, and I'm going to take your advice because I realized as you were asking me, uh, maybe I should point people to the stuff I like, and I
Yeah.
realize that's hard to do. I mean, I write white papers, but I mean,
For
nobody
fun
wants to read a
that
white
you put in
paper.
a
It's so
drawer. Oh
I
my
do,
goodness.
I do. No, I write them. It's like I'm a. Well, I had an English architecture professor. He'd call it genius in your own underpants.
That's what I was thinking. Like, oh, but you asked ChatGPT what you think of your white papers. Oh yeah, you're doing
You're
good.
a genius.
You're the
You're a
best.
genius in your own underpants. Yeah. But I do think like having more accessible, fun content. So we need to do a better job, and maybe that's my resolution for 26. Just to get some pointers out there.
Maybe we can
Well,
help you with that.
I love
and
that. Thank you.
someone
Yeah.
I might connect you with, Fuad, is Matt Graves.
Right.
Like I think he is like best in class in this category of creating content that is really consumable, that is entertaining but also informative. And so if you're not on Substack, check out Matt Graves' Construction Curiosities. He puts out
Cool.
like once every couple weeks. But I also look forward to your Substack and podcast coming out in 2026. Do you
Yes,
have any
sir.
name ideas?
I think it's going to be called, I don't know, the Modly Podly or something, or the
Oh, I like
Modcast
that.
podcast,
Done.
something. I
Done.
don't
Don't
know.
overthink it. Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Yeah, done. All right, Lars, final thoughts.
I do, and I got a big one. Is that okay,
Oh
Steve?
boy,
I know,
he's
I
known.
know.
He's like,
I
oh,
can't
we got
wait.
30 seconds left. Let me ask you what you think the
Take
meaning
us
of life
out.
is.
So, as much as I don't like to admit, I think the government plays a lot of role in driving innovation. Specifically, think green energy, solar, wind, things like that, right? They put incentives in place. Do you see any legislation around, this world that is going to incentivize the industry to go in a certain way? Do you see anyone touching that or talking about it?
I think I am in touch with. Uh, I really think it has to happen at the state level. I don't really think the federal level is able to be as responsive to all of the things that are going on. And I am really encouraged, like for example, in the area of mass timber manufacturing and processing, the states are starting to understand, or really it's going to be maybe like regional coalitions, Northeast, Southeast, Northwest, Midwest. And that's where I think because we are talking about some specific things, workforce, the demographics, the makeup, the needs, the climate. I think that's where that stuff's going to happen. But what I would like to see is like best practices kind of shared across that. That's where I think it is.
Okay, so but what's super interesting, it goes back to the education piece, right?
Yes.
And as you sort of answer that question, state level, 100% makes total sense. We can also get at the feds too, but I should put you in touch with AGC chapters, and because they're lobbying, they have all of the contacts. It's what they
Yeah.
do. They protect the industry. They help the industry,
They're very
and they're the
good.
ones they're the ones dealing with threats. And I've been involved in the AGC for a long time, boards and everything, national level. So I believe that, again, to start the conversation, to start the education, and then with the right players, every state's is dealing with this problem. You know,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
it's, yeah,
And that's a great tip, Lars. I'm gonna go check out my
yeah.
local chat. I'm an architect,
No,
but
well, you're
I think
welcome. You're
that's. I
welcome. We're
thank
an
you. Thank you.
inclusive
Okay,
group.
I'm going. I'm there. Thank you. I hadn't thought about that before, and I definitely will do that.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. Well, I think that's the pod. Thanks, Fuad.
Awesome, guys. Thank you.